Theodore Roosevelt's presidency is often referred to as the birth of conservation in the United States. It's no wonder that he chose such a vast, beautiful part of North Dakota with bison, green grasslands, and rolling hills to live in, and was named after him and his passion for the outdoors. This is Teddy Roosevelt National Park, and it's a pawn in an ongoing turf war with the oil industry. Today, 90% of new oil developments in the U.S. are hydraulic fracturing sites. Fracking has quickly become the United States' #1 source for natural gas used for everyday energy needs, and the demand meets the supply. Unfortunately, some of our national parks hold valuable oil reserves highly sought after by oil companies in America, and with the help of our Commander-in-Chief and his executives, they may be able to get it. The term fracking comes from the process of collecting the oil. Underground, especially in the red areas, shale rock formations hold crude oil and gas. When this rock is drilled into, explosives make fractures in the rock, increasing the surface area and allowing oil to flow freely from the rock. Then, water, clays, and fracking fluids are pumped at high pressure into the well. When the pressure is released, oil can flow up. Some of the dangers of fracking have been identified, but what makes fracking so controversial is the legislation surrounding it, or the lack of it. Because of legislation brought on by George W. Bush and Dick Cheney during their time in office, fracking is not included within the Clean Water Act of 1972, exempting hydraulic fracturing operations from review from the EPA. This bill also allows fracking companies to keep their practices private in part, meaning they are not required to report the contents of what they put into the earth for oil. Fracking fluids are so controversial to environmentalists because no one except the companies producing it know exactly what chemicals are present or how they may be affecting the environment. Since his inauguration, Donald Trump has already managed to perform the largest backward step in land protection in U.S. history by reducing both Bears Ears and Grand Staircase National Monuments by a total of 85%. 1.35 million acres of protected land and wildlife refuge reduced to just over 200,000 acres. These two national monuments were just two in a long list of parks currently under review.
Now to a story almost unheard of in this economy.
There's a modern-day gold rush going on right now in North Dakota.
It's called the Bakken Formation, a vast 200,000 square mile area.
The Bakken oil boom has brought jobs and newfound wealth to North Dakota, but there is a cost. The region's unchecked development is on a collision course with one of America's truly special places.
This is the beginning, and just the beginning, of what will be a massive invasion of the heart of Roosevelt country and the heart of Theodore Roosevelt National Park by oil development.
The biggest shale formation in the U.S., called the Bakken Formation, sits under most of North Dakota and much of eastern Montana. It has brought this region to an all-out scramble for oil like a modern-day gold rush, making Teddy Roosevelt National Park and the protected lands that surround it an island in a sea of development. Oil developments ruin national parks and the visitor's experience. We visit national parks for their ability to take us away from our routine lives and place us in a serene environment where we can relax, recreate, and enjoy nature. Unsightly oil rigs and flares take away from the experience. In extreme places like Teddy Roosevelt National Park, these developments are visible for some of the most pristine overlooks in the country. Development also brings a higher demand for transportation to and from the site. Fracking especially requires a high amount of industrial transportation. The process requires copious amounts of water and sand to be trucked in, as well as the rig equipment, digging equipment, construction facilities, workers' own transportation, and the moving of the produced oil. The amount and type of traffic makes the campgrounds near roads almost impossible to sleep in, while transforming the image of cities surrounding the development and contributing to carbon emissions known to cause climate change.
Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen a lot of changes as the oil development has ramped up exponentially around us.
Already there is peripheral damage to one's experience in the park. You can't sleep in the campgrounds without hearing it. You can't approach the park without going through oil traffic. There's visual blight, and soon this encroachment will come from every direction on all 3 units, and they will be literally surrounded by a level of industrialism that nobody could have predicted.
Well, if things continue unabated, I think we're going to see our big game wildlife populations out in the western third of the state reduced by at least half.
National parks provide more than a visitor experience for us, they provide a home for many species of wildlife. With each building we erect for industrial development, we take away from a habitat. Contributing to this, roads split habitats into fragments by creating an impermeable barrier that animals cannot cross safely. This contributes to lowering diversity in complex ecosystems, which puts a strain on the survival of some species, especially ones already protected to prevent extinction. Deforestation and fencing contribute to habitat fragmentation as well, but conservationists are finding creative ways to avoid it, like this land bridge for animals to cross safely over highways. For myself and many other outdoor enthusiasts, dark night skies are a huge draw to remote parks. The most remote and dark parks in the U.S. offer views of the night sky that are unrivaled. Just up the road, Rocky Mountain National Park in Estes proves to be amongst the best for astrophotography and stargazing. However, if Estes were to be taken over by industry, much like Teddy Roosevelt National Park has been, the constant light pollution from flares burning excess methane gas during oil production would leave the night sky drowned out. North Dakota has already fallen victim to this, as it's almost impossible to see the night sky in much of the state.
It used to be that you came up to this spot in the park and it was total black. You didn't see a thing out here. But as you will notice, if you start over here, you see a rig and a flare, and you move over and you see a flare. There's no reason that those wells won't be right up to the park boundaries.
Our ability to observe these changes and reactions in many diverse environments comes straight from the research done within our national parks. Parks are the frontier for science and exploration, serving as a living laboratory for a wide array of sciences from geology, meteorology, land and marine wildlife work, and more. Since their founding, national parks and their unique features and inhabitants have been observed to make some of the most influential discoveries in science. Parks are a part of the bigger picture when it comes to the next generations and our global responsibility to respond to climate change. Children today will be challenged by climate change and the ensuing effects within their lifetime. National parks and the National Park Service take a heads-on approach when it comes to educating for a better tomorrow. Ranger-led hikes, campfires, museums, and positive experiences in the outdoors naturally turn recreationists into conservationists. While these assets are invaluable to our lives and future, economic benefits of keeping our parks clean and safe are astronomical but measurable. In 2017, the national parks contributed a whopping $35.8 billion to the U.S. economy and attracted over 330 million visitors. Parks are a huge uplift to surrounding communities, creating thousands of jobs and generating income in lodging, restaurants, merchandise, gas, parks fees, and transportation. An obvious source of income worth protecting. What happened to Bears Ears and Grand Escalante National Parks in Utah was the most drastic setback of protected lands in U.S. history. It is so important that the people of the United States protect their lands that Teddy Roosevelt saw so much in. The need for oil and the resulting financial benefits are clear, but that doesn't mean we can't take our time to do things right and continue to keep these few special places safe and beautiful.